that looks like. Okay, so we're now moving on in the program. The next presentation, it's titled Sami Salmon Struggles, the right to know, the right to fish. And I would like to invite up Aslak Holmberg, Joni Soyets, and Juha Hidampe to come to the table, please. Introduce you first. Yeah. So our three presenters, I will introduce them to you. Aslak Holmberg, he has for the past decade worked with Sami and indigenous issues through NGOs, the Sami Parliament in Finland, as well as through activism and academia. He is currently the president of the Sami Council. From 2017 to 22, he was a vice president and is also a former member of the Sami Parliament in Finland. He's a fisher, teacher, and author, and holds a master's degree in Indigenous Studies. Joni Soyets, he is from Gargasniarka, which is the upper part of the Deno River. He is a PhD student at the University of Oulu, Kjelgas Institute. His background is in linguistics, being a Northern Sami mother tongue teacher. Since 2015, he has been involved in 2 different Deno salmon-related projects, and I also think that we will hear more about some of those projects today. He is also a journalist in the Sami TV. So, Aslak, please, will you start?
If I could get the other presentation on the screen, technicians. Joo, puerre päivi fas pohkaiden mun peasan kusto johke päivä täppe joita halla, mutta meippahan taskolla. Nää kuhkäs pohtannu semmahan tällä mai hallat. Yes, so good day everybody. Again, looks like I get to speak every day here, but why not as I've come so far. So we are a few guys here on the stage now, and we want to bring a glimpse into Sami indigenous knowledge on salmon and research related to that. And to kind of lay the ground to this, I'll be sharing some thoughts about well, what is Sami indigenous knowledge on the salmon and river Dätnu, and what kind of challenges, in my view, there are with collaborations between biologists and indigenous knowledge holders. So I'll be expanding a bit on what we heard Steinar speak about earlier today. Yes. So this is what I try to cover in the short time that I have here. Just a quick look on Dätnu, then what is Sami indigenous knowledge on salmon and Dätnu, and what kind of what biologists are saying as reasons for decline in the salmon stocks. Also looking at what kind of differences and similarities there are in the knowledge systems, and look into some historic management actions and some thoughts regarding possible future management actions that could be taken based on Sami knowledge. Dätnu, it's Teno in Finnish, Tana in Norwegian, and in North Sami, Dätnu. As we've heard many times already, it's a major Atlantic salmon river, the biggest one in Europe. So it's about 16,000 square kilometers, and there are 1,200 kilometers of river where salmon goes into. It's also the most diverse Atlantic salmon river in the world. And as you've heard many times, salmon is an essential part of our culture, and we call ourselves Chatsekätte Olomot, which means people of the water or the people of the shore. And this is a picture from Porapokca, which is one of the major rapids, and this is after a great ice break. We don't have this kind of ice breaks so often anymore nowadays. So yeah, we have quite a challenging situation in Tetnu. We got strong restrictions for fishing in 2017, which focused on Sami traditional fishing. And in the past few years, we have experienced a strong decline in the salmon stocks. And as has been mentioned before, for the past 2 summers, we have had a complete ban on the salmon fishery. What hasn't been talked about so much is that we've had an invasion of new species. So pink salmon is not a native species to our river, but last summer, or in 2021, it was outnumbering the native species, which is Atlantic salmon. We have experienced a lot of abnormal summers, and as was the second slide, change is the new normal, so we barely have what could be called normal summers. What did I do? Yes. So we have floods, we have droughts, high water temperatures. So these things impact both the salmon and our fishery. So we have more or less lost what used to be a normal summer. So a little bit on Sami indigenous knowledge. Sami used to govern fishing in Tetnu until the 19th century. Sida is a Sami village, which is a governance structure with a certain area that it governs. Or it's nowadays mainly a historic concept, because at least in my region it's not a functioning organ anymore. But Sida was what organized the collective fishing, solved disputes regarding fishing rights, and to ensure the sustainability of the fishery, that required quite close communication between people in the different parts of the watershed. So I've looked into different studies on Sami knowledge on salmon, and of course that's the community where I come from, so also bringing that knowledge to this discussion. Knowledge holders raise a variety of issues that impact the salmon, such as increased erosion, predation, and tourist fishing has increased. Climate change is a major factor both in the freshwater and in the ocean, impacting the availability of the food of the salmon in the ocean, and as well as concerns regarding salmon farming are raised by Sami knowledge holders. As we heard in the morning from Steinar, Sami used to have quite efficient ways of restricting predators of salmon, and thus improving the productivity of the rivers. So we used to hunt birds that feed on salmon juveniles, such as gooseanders and cormorants. We used to hunt seals and otters, which also feed on salmon, and also the fishing of other fish species that are predators of salmon juveniles used to be much more extensive than it is nowadays. So often the Sami knowledge holders have not been in agreement with the biologists regarding the reasons that impact the salmon stocks. And it was just up until a few years ago that the biologists were arguing that only overfishing is a factor significant enough to impact the salmon stocks in a way that they considered that the stocks have been declining. Just in the past few years, this line of argumentation has changed, because we have experienced such a strong decline in the salmon stocks that it cannot be explained with overfishing, because fishing pressure hasn't changed significantly, whilst the amount of returning salmon has declined very strongly. So, to put it in other words, juvenile production is still rather stable, whilst the salmon are not returning in the same way as they used to be. So this does point to changes in the ocean migration. So the smolts are not returning from the ocean, and we don't know the reasons, but there are estimates that these are linked to changes in the availability of food or distribution of food of salmon. So it is estimated that some key food species of salmon, such as capelin, have migrated a couple thousand kilometers north due to warming waters, and when salmon go to their traditional feeding areas, they don't find food there anymore. So this is the slide where I look into some of the challenges regarding trying to combine these two knowledge systems. There is a group of 4 biologists, 2 nominated by Finland, 2 by Norway, and they are the ones who write the annual reports on the salmon stocks in the Tietno watershed. They are required to take Sami indigenous knowledge into account in their research, but as also Steinar was pointing out, they have quite significant challenges on that. So in order for Sami knowledge to be part of the reports, it has to be approved by the biologists. So they are a filter, and they consider what knowledge is relevant and what is valid, and then perhaps part of it gets into the reports. So if they cannot confirm Sami knowledge with the methods that they have, then they conclude that these are not relevant or that they are untrue. While it can be quite challenging to prove some Sami knowledge, the biologists use mainly quantitative methods. So they need data, they need information that can be changed into a numerical form so that they can calculate it and then count the estimates based on this data. Not all knowledge that Sami have can be translated into a numerical form, and often qualitative knowledge is not sufficiently estimated in these reports. And some Sami knowledge could be quantified, but it is not, such as loss of spawning areas or increase of the predation pressure for the salmon stocks. So what the biologists do, they fragment the Sami knowledge system. They try to evaluate each of the concerns individually, one by one, and they do conclude that none of them separately can be a reason for the decline in the salmon stocks that has been experienced. What they do not do is try to evaluate the more holistic, the group of reasons, so to say, that the knowledge holders are raising, and the cumulative impacts that that might have on the salmon stocks. Yes, I think this is my concluding slide. So, looking into what the issues the Sami knowledge holders are raising and have been raising throughout the year, I see some management actions that could be asked or executed based on this knowledge, but what hasn't been done. What happened here? Okay. Scaring me with the changes. I can barely read it now, but So as the main problems seem to be in the ocean and have to do with the availability of food of salmon, that should be considered. How can we improve the status of the species that salmon feeds on? And that could be done, for example, by having more strong fishing restrictions regarding the key food species. Also regulating salmon farming, especially the open net farming in areas where salmon are swimming, which is basically all the coast. And as it's estimated in Norway that salmon farming is the #1 threat to what I call salmon. Some call it wild salmon. And then strengthening of juvenile production by decreasing the number of predators and restoring lost spawning grounds or spawning redds that have been lost due to erosion, and also strengthening the banks of the river to slow down erosion. And of course, we do have to regulate fishing pressure because the salmon are not returning in the same numbers as they used to be. I think we should fish more other species. Next summer we're expecting a big run of this invasive pink salmon. So we should be able to make use of that new, very plentiful species that is coming, as well as fishing of the more healthier populations of sea trout, grayling and pike. And of course we are competing over the same resources. All the fishers have to share the same salmon stock, so we need to give due consideration who can fish and how much. And as was pointed out previously, then the Sami rights holders should be the first priority when fishing licenses are distributed. Joo, kiitos.
And while the technical staff is changing, thank you, Aslak. And yes, so it's an honor to be here, welcoming that it's an honor to be here. And we will be talking about the research project that was done last year. This is on social, cultural, health and economic impacts of the first total salmon fishing ban at the river Teatno on 2021. Can we change the PowerPoint? Yes, thank you. And so we are going to work together for the next 4 years as well. Juha is going to speak, hopefully if he has time, then more on that project. But now I'm going to talk about Luossa that was conducted last year. And what Aslak was referring on traditional knowledge, also I have conducted in 2015 to 2018 interviews related to traditional knowledge of the whole watercourse on the Finnish side. And so we are 5 researchers on this project, which is the Finnish Natural Resources Institute. I was then asked to conduct interviews in last autumn. And as Aslak already told, then there was the first total salmon ban. And our research objective was to recognize the main social impacts of the temporary salmon ban and create the basis to follow these impacts. Our perspective is policy implementation, research and impact assessment. And they will also follow the Ministry of Justice, Finnish Ministry of Justice's impact assessment. And in addition, impacts on Sami cultural practices, health and well-being were in our research project. Our data and methods include statements and from the hearings each year when the new regulations are being there are hearings, so we looked upon those from 2020. And then Lohita 2018, it's another research project of economical impacts on the municipality of Utsjoki. And then our own observations during interviews and during workshops. We had physical workshops, 2 of those, or 3 of those, and then 4 internet-based, Teams-based workshops. And then we had a survey for entrepreneurs in Utsjoki. And most of the interviews I conducted, and there is no map there, but in total there were 32 men and 10 women. We tried to cover the whole water course on the Finnish side. I will not go in detail how many of them, but what we observed then, impacts on Sami culture, social statuses and relationships, health and well-being, and on local economy and entrepreneurship. And so now we will go through each theme a bit through quotations from the data that we have collected. Effects on Sami culture. There were 4 major themes that were on the data or the interviews. Feeling of injustice continue, like we have heard that states of Finland and Norway have regulated fishing since 1875 and then Sami culture, customary law has not been taken in consideration. And of course, fear of losing your own culture through the ban, and traditional livelihood and lifestyles, they were prevented, and then of course health effects. I will jump that over. Aim of this ban is probably that people will forget their culture, stated a man that is over 65 years old. I'm afraid that all fishing will end in Terno. I do not know exactly how the ban will affect us, but I am worried that our fishing traditions will end, stated a woman between 40 and 65 years old. And how did then traditional livelihoods and lifestyles were prevented? Besides fishing, the river has many customary habits and communal ways that when we meet people during fishing and outside of fishing season, but now when there was no fishing, we did not meet those people that we regularly would meet during fishing season. And also transmission of traditional knowledge to children and youth, it was prevented now for 2 years, so there were no, and traditional knowledge is only transmitted through practices, as we know. And few quotes here that I have a 10-year-old son. He would have wanted to fish like every summer we do, stated the man between 40s and 65 years old. And then what is very important in the case of Terno, during fishing season, we do not ask, how are you doing? We ask, lähkö kotiin kuoli, which means, have you got any salmon? But which can be translated, are you doing well? But this summer and last summer, none of those questions were asked. It has already a huge impact on health and well-being when we do not ask, how are you doing? And we cannot ask, lähkö kotiin kuoli, have you got any fish? And of course, elders or older fishers were mostly affected. And I have been a bit depressed. It is really strange that we are not allowed to fish, although the river is just next to us. And I have never before experienced anything like this, and hopefully I won't never again. But not only older fishers experience this. Man under 45 years old stated, one will think of escaping this place. I was stressed, depressed when I did not know what to do now. I believe it would have been a very difficult summer for me if I would not have been able to fish Pacific salmon in Norway. They have had a project on this invasive species, so he was part of that, this fisher. And then increased the fear of depression among other fishers as well. And the river is also a place where you can rest. And now when you don't go to the river, you don't rest, you don't recharge your batteries, you don't get to be healthy in that sense. This is just the web, this is in Finnish, but you can see that there are many different ways that everything is connected. But I will jump over that since we're running out of time. Other social effects: inequality, increase of inequality among Samis and Finnish, changes in the community's way of life and social relations, administrative processes and social injustice, as we have already heard, that customary law is not taken in consideration in the management. And then we have not talked so much on economy, but then in Finland, also Sami entrepreneurs sell fishing licenses. And then before 2017, there was no limit how much whatsoever you could sell as much fishing licenses to the river as you want. But then 2017, there was a regulation that it is only 11,000 on both sides of the river. So that's why there is this huge drop on 2017, and then of course during 2020 and 22, then there is very little licenses sold. And I will also jump over this, only point out here that during the ban, did their revenue increase or decrease? As you see in the bottom, most of the entrepreneurs that we interviewed or surveyed, 78.3% stated that their revenue decreased. And in the municipality of Utsjoki or Ortseoka, from these numbers in the middle column, 4.1 million euros is estimated that the municipality of Utsjoki lost in the during the first year of the total fishing ban. I will not go in detail how and what are the ways what are affected, but tourist licenses, cabin renting, and then grocery shopping by others. And now I will give the stage to Juha Hiedanpää, and he will continue on another research project that we will have. Thank you.
Thank you, and Juha, I'm pleased to welcome you also. Juha is a research professor in natural resource and environmental policy and governance at the Natural Resource Institute Finland, or LYKE. He writes about wildlife, biodiversity and land use, and teaches on ecological economics, global economy and biodiversity crisis at the University of Turku, Finland. So he will talk about now this new project, which we are excited to hear about, and which I hope your clever students will also participate in the future.
Thank you, Camilla. And I'm so happy and honored to be here. This is so educational for me to come here and learn new things. Anyway, I will be very brief. I will be brief, introducing a couple of projects that we are starting. As Aslak and Joni indicated, we have problems in Finland and in Teno area regarding salmon management. If we could have the
same slide that was already there.
Yeah.
Could you please put that back there?
Yeah.
We will continue from that.
Okay. Anyway, this straight continuation to this study on impacts of total salmon fishing ban. While we were doing that, we wrote a research proposal to the Academy of Finland, and we were lucky because this is, nice continuation and important topic. Bringing institutional virtues into governance, integrating the scientific, indigenous and local knowing in Teno River salmon policy and administration. So institutional virtues are here our word. Did it change? Yeah, just briefly. It's so nice to be from Finland. Whatever index, democracy or quality index you take regarding countries or states, Finland is always in top 3 or top 5. So it's a wonder why Finland fails so dramatically when it comes to wildlife, and now especially to Teno salmon. So that's why we took this approach of institutional virtues. Normally that's individual character being virtuous, but how institutions can be virtuous, or should they be? This comes to Tatiana's definition, so that institutions are collective action. So we are trying to understand that and give push to administration and lawmakers, policymakers in Helsinki. That's our job, just to list our objectives. To organize and coordinate transdisciplinary research projects in such a way that it positively influences salmon policymaking and local livelihood prospects. To identify and analyze natural and social, scientific, local, and indigenous knowledge relevant for systematic understanding of the factors affecting the well-being of Teno salmon, including potential knowledge gaps. Thirdly, to understand the nature and evolution of Sami Teno salmon management institutions to help improve Teno salmon policy and governance. To indicate the relationship between different knowings about salmon and the formal knowledge requirements in Teno salmon policymaking. This has been the challenge, as Aslak greatly introduced and explicated. To co-create, test, and demonstrate rigorous criteria and mechanisms for ethical and equitable knowledge sharing and integration. Okay, and here's I took this just to show. We had Sam Brad here making these wonderful illustrations, and we are not that skillful. So this is our, visualization of our work. This is just so wonderful that we have such people like Sam. And then the other one. This is the newest one, and Camilla is with us. So there we have Natural Resources Institute, the Arctic University of Norway, Norwegian Institute for Nature Research, NINA, and Umeå University from Sweden. So here we are doing the same thing, more or less, than in Diatno in this previous project, but now we have two other countries, and we are looking both from the Norwegian side and Finnish side to this problematic. So just to quickly show. So this, as you see, this is pretty much the pretty similar sort of project. 4 years as well, starting to by the end of this year or early next year. This study aims to support collaborative governance for recovery of diverse Atlantic salmon populations complex in the large river Teno catchment in the northmost Fennoscandia. Through the establishment of a living lab, the project connects knowledge production with salmon management, with a special emphasis on the development of population-specific target-based assessment of genetically diverse salmon populations in a multicultural setting that values indigenous and local knowledge and rights. Again, transdisciplinary work on that. So again, what Aslak just said about this, this genetics. So this will be covered in this one. And bringing population ecology in work package 1 does Bayesian population modeling for assessing the status of Teno Atlantic salmon population. And here, the second subtask here is important because there we are exactly trying to do that incorporation of indigenous local knowledge into Bayesian thinking. How uncertainties and qualitative stuff could be brought to statistics and Bayesian analysis. And do a collaborative governance. And here, Shelley's interactive governance model. Here we have our framework for collaborative governance. That's our starting point, and we start to fix that and develop that further. But collaborative governance is basic there. And how to make things different in practice. Okay, that's the third work package. And this image is much nicer than the previous one. Okay, but this illustrates it gives image of our project. Thank you.